Ted and Brandon, I'm gonna bring you on as panelists, so you can turn yourselves on and off if you wish. Panelists. Ted Erickson
Is our engineer,
is our engineer. Okay.
and Brandon's our operator,
Okay. There, I
contractor.
think I read about them and, oh, there, yeah. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Sorry. Brandon and Ted, can you say hello?
Well,
Okay,
it's Brandon.
that was Brandon. Ted's on the phone, I know. All right, public participation. Any participation at this time from any of the people?
We have one Zoom hand, Jonathan Greenberg. Jonathan?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Anybody else? I see no other interested public.
Okay, we'll close that topic and moving on, approval of last LASA meeting minutes.
I move that we accept them as presented to us.
Support?
Motion made and supported, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Minutes approved. Presentations to the board at this time, I would like to, we're waiting for Attorney Fink to show up, but we have, the township has made a replacement for Will Hathaway. I guess we will leave the kind of the motion till we hear from the attorney here, but we can at least get through the.
And I can also share what he's said so far, that he said the order of events would be that the LASA board would need to first consider the resignation and then accept the appointment by the Scioto Township Board.
One question, Jessica. Did he say that Will can resign?
He did say that Will can resign. And I spent, I will share, I spent quite a bit of time with LASA history, and we found no Supreme Court case. I know we thought there was one. There was another case. It didn't directly go to this issue. I will say that, you know, the meeting minutes go back to 1955, the joint meetings, and the LASA board for several decades was comprised of both 5-member township boards. So it was all 10 meeting together for several decades. And I reminded our board of this too. At our last meeting, the first articles of incorporation from 1957 reflect that. And then it was in 1971 where it was reduced to the supervisor, clerk, and a trustee of each township.
In 71?
Yes,
And that was in the Articles of Incorporation.
correct, in the Articles of Incorporation. There was a subsequent amendment to the Articles of Incorporation, which was fully signed, and I distributed at our last operating meeting. That is the effective one. It does have language in there cited by Will in his letter, and Township Attorney Fink has said he may resign. He also said, you need new articles, because I will share my non-legal opinion, but as a plain reader, in reading the Articles of Incorporation, this, in the event that any member clause, it's plain to me that it didn't anticipate this scenario. That it anticipated a scenario where on November 20th, a supervisor, clerk, or trustee might start their term, and at that point might select an elector of their jurisdiction to serve in their place. However, Fink has advised us that it stands up and he may do so. He wants to come here tonight in part because he has recommended that our Articles of Incorporation are kind of sloppy, this area being a sloppy area.
Any other comments on it? Thoughts? I included in the meeting package the September 7th letter from Will to me. I received via email that, as he pointed out, in the event that any member of the authority who is a member of the township board but chooses not to serve as a member of the authority board, that the member may nominate any person who is qualified elector of that township to serve the member's term, provided that such nomination is approved by the township's board of that township.
And Fink has said that language does control. I don't think this circumstance was anticipated, but this is the controlling language we have.
That being said, I would move that we, as Lasse's board, accept Mr. Hathaway's resignation.
Support.
All in favor?
Probably should do a roll call.
Oh, do I? It's not money. Okay, roll call. Kalaja,
Aye.
Flintoff,
Aye.
Kingsley,
Aye.
Navarre, aye.
So we now have a vacancy.
So we now have a vacancy. And
What did Scioto Township do at its last meeting?
Well, good news, Scioto Township was thinking ahead. And with full support of the full board, Will nominated and the board approved trustee Jillian Carey to serve on the LASA board for the remainder of the term through November 20th, 2024. I know Jillian is down to earth, pragmatic, and would be a great addition.
So are you nominating her then to be accepted by this body, or how do we
You know,
do that?
I don't know that the body
Has any input?
has any input, but
Okay.
certainly,
Well, we could confirm it probably.
yes, I think so.
Choose the word confirm.
I'd like to make a motion to confirm trustee Carey's membership on LASA.
I'll second that.
roll call on that. Kalaja,
Aye.
Flintoff,
Aye.
Kingsley,
Aye.
Navarre, aye. Congratulations.
Wait a minute. Are we waiting for the attorney?
No.
He might have a different opinion now.
It's done.
Gonna be hard to
Well, thank
change
you.
it. We can always amend it. But, okay,
No.
so just for clarification, and it's one thing we haven't been doing is kind of like, okay, this is the next term, everybody check in, you're responsible for these roles and we're moving forward. And that is the November of the even year or that. Is it every
It's every
four,
4 years.
4 years, it's every 4 years, right,
Yes,
after the election.
It used to be, the trustee was every 2 years, but the amendment, the third amendment,
right.
clarified that to every 4 years.
Okay, so it'll be, everyone's in their current roles through to 24/11, November of 24.
Correct.
Okay. One more year.
Hell of a year.
Okay, all right, well, I guess we'll move on, wait for his comments on, when he gets here. So, moving on to, F&V and their report, I guess, at this point in time, Brandon, well, you know what, let me get Ted, because he'll be out of here then. And then, I screwed up this agenda totally.
Okay.
Reliability study is part of Ted's, work. You mind, Brandon, if I let Ted go first here?
Not at all. I have some things for the reliability study with Ted as well.
Okay, yes. All right, Ted, why don't you, give us your, update?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Right, yeah, I'm in my car and somewhere in northern Indiana, so apologize for that. But so the reliability study, we looked at the water flows for the system for the last 5 years, and as you know, we've kind of had a static customer base, and nothing's really changed in the flows. So we're basically done with the report. There is no glaring things. The deficiency is that we do not have any recent ISO hydrant tests to calibrate the model with. So I asked Brandon to put together a price for that, which I think he sent over today. Correct, Brandon?
Yes.
And I honestly did not get a chance to look at that, but we had asked them to put, ideally we get like 10 tests, static and flow tests on a hydrant. We can live with 5 to calibrate this model. So can you go over that report or over that proposal quickly, Brandon?
Yeah, not a problem. So essentially to do 5 hydrants, the lump sum price would be $2,700. To do 10 hydrants, the lump sum price is $3,800. Not terrible big difference in price. So, I mean, that's if Ted thinks this 10 is better, that might, the price is not that much different.
I think for that difference, I think I would push for the 10. The modeling is required by the state, by Eagle, every 5 years. I tried to get out of it because, as I said earlier, that we basically have a static system. We've had plus or minus 540 customers over the last four decades, and we haven't really seen any flow or pressure issues. And we've only made the system better. That said, the answer is they're going to make us do the model. So I think getting the 10 tests is a good thing.
All right, and you've also talked to them and got them to allow us to delay submittal until we get this testing done?
I did.
Okay, well, I think we need to proceed with the testing. What was it for 10 hydrants?
35.
38.
38?
$3,800.
$3,800. So I would make a motion that we approve those costs and have you proceed with that work. We need a vote on that? No, we needed a second, I guess. So
Support.
first, support by Jessica. Doing a roll call here, we've got Kalasia,
Aye.
Flintoff,
Aye.
Kingsley,
Aye.
Navarre, aye. All right. you can proceed with that then, Brandon, and, anything else? Jim Fink's made it here now. Is there anything else you had, Ted?
The only thing that's hanging out there is the easement issue. We had I think Jim was checking on something a couple meetings ago. Maybe he can help us with that. I don't know that that's moved forward, but that's the only other thing that's hanging out there.
What was it? Was a statement made or something, in the easement? Summary?
I had put together a letter kind of documenting where we were, and there was some language in that letter that wasn't preferred by the operating committee, and Jim was going to look at that. And I don't, I think I've bumped him a couple times, but that's hanging out there.
So Ted, would that be an email from you to Jim?
Yeah, it would.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in one of the old ops meetings. Neil Garrow brought it up.
He did. He brought it up at this recent ops meeting.
Oh, yeah, happy to talk about that. And we talked about, you want me to do that now?
Well, I guess that's the only thing about that issue, if you got some thoughts on it.
My thoughts keep changing on it as we go through this more, and it strikes me that, well, let me back up. We did some work, we figured out where the lines were, and I think this is off the top of my head, I think we have about 6 or 8 areas where there's not a recorded easement where either water or sewer traverse what I'll call golf course lots. If there's going to be development on any of the golf course lots, they will need water and sewer. And they will have to have their plans approved by either the Scioto Township Board or the Webster Township Board. And so it's not as if there's going to be construction on a lot that affects your water or sewer lines without both this board and whichever of the municipalities is there. And it seems like we can take care of it then. We had talked about, and Ted and I had talked about the idea of maybe filing an affidavit of interest with each of these lots. There had been some talk about maybe even filing a lawsuit to establish a prescriptive easement. But as I've been thinking about it more, no one is going to do anything in any construction on those lots without the proper governmental approvals, and we will be able to protect your lines when that happens.
Any thoughts, discussion?
It makes sense to me. I don't know if we
I
want more
don't know.
assurance,
Yeah, I just don't know. I can't
right?
think.
You
of
won't be
what
here
they
that
have.
day.
Yeah, you're right.
You don't care.
I think all that's true. I think the only thing that we had talked about was putting together a letter that documented kind of that position. And I did that, and there was just some language in that letter that we needed to miss a little bit. I don't have it in front of me either, obviously, but that was the only thing that was kind of hanging out there. Because it kind of the language I originally used kind of led it towards development if it were to happen, were to be almost in some it could have been taken as committing losses to it. So I think was the issue that Neil had.
Yeah, Neil had an issue. I think it was, well, you're almost identifying that we have a weakness here. And he was concerned about it. Because we're sticking, well, we don't have all these easements in place.
Right.
And it's like, I don't want to say that.
How many lots are there that are in question?
Well, there's only 7 golf course lots or so, 7 or 8, but
Ted, my recollection is that some of the easements are recorded already in the larger ones. And we have that from the plats and from, not the plats, but from the recordings themselves. But there are a few places where they aren't recorded. But they've been in place for 50 years.
Yeah, the ones that the golf course lots, are the ones that are in question mostly. The ones that go through the residential lots per se are pretty well nailed down. It's the kind of the main lines in the golf course lots that aren't really identified anywhere. But yeah, and like I said, we just kind of wanted to have a memo internally that documented that.
Yeah,
Because as things change, you kind of lose it. So
Right.
My only concern would be if Whaley decides to sell individual lots. Say he sells 2 out of the 7 to somebody else is dumb enough, I mean, articulate enough to discriminate and buy a lot that we don't have something on. It would be harder to leverage that than it would be to leverage Mr. Whaley at this point in time. I like your approach.
I don't know
Just
that
sit on
you
it
need to
until
leverage
something
anything,
happens.
because our lines are there.
Yep.
And someone, I suppose, could pay to move the lines so that they had a buildable lot. But as I said, no one's gonna dig a basement without having the proper permits, and neither township is going to issue a permit, and neither planning commission is going to approve a project that results in terminating water and sewer lines for the community.
I think that's logical. I was just trying to look at what the downside could ever be.
And Ted's right, we have kicked around drafts of letters and different things, and we could. Current owner is just reminding them that these lines are there and that any potential development plans have to take that into consideration, but I also don't know that you have to.
Well, yeah, it really wasn't for the owner, it was really for then the people that come back in 5 or 10 years and something is resurrected on it, to have something of record of at least what has been done with the easements. As far as, because a lot of work went into researching and pulling all the existing data out of there, so. I don't know, that was the purpose of the memo, as far as I thought. So do we still wanna do that memo, or are we better off not doing it?
Something about sleeping dogs lie in terms of sending anything to Whaley.
I would.
In terms
Is
of
he watching?
in terms of, we should have something in our minutes to reflect Mr. Fink's advice that the lines have been there for 50 years and will continue to be there, and that if there ever is any development other than for golf course use, that this body needs to remind each of the townships involved that those lines are there, and therefore they need to either move the lines or they need to get an easement for the lines where they currently exist.
Yeah, I'd like to ask just one question, just to make sure that I think you should follow my advice also. And that is, if someone wants to put any type of building that has water and sewer, will they be required to hook up to LASA utilities?
They're part of the sewer district.
They can't,
Yes.
they can't have a septic field,
Correct.
and they can't have a well.
Right.
So in that sense, there is no one that can do any kind of construction, even on a single lot, without coming to you and saying, what do I need to do to get water and sewer? And then we'll be able to have the conversation.
My thought is that we could have something in the record so that the people 20 years from now can go back and see what we said about it.
That makes sense. Sometimes when we go back and look at the record, we wonder why people said it that way.
You missed our earlier conversation, yeah. So do we want something just in the minutes here, or do we want to ask Jim to finalize that
You know,
letter?
Ted and I could knock this out in
Okay.
half an hour.
I like that idea.
Can we do that? We'll just give them a memo.
She's taking minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll dig that up and send it back to you, Jim.
I'm sure I have it also.
okay,
so Jim and Ted to finish.
yeah.
And you mean it this time.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. All right, let's go back then for Jim to go back to our comments on, any comments on the resignation and replacement procedure for the position, open board position here at LASA. We have already kind of went through the process here and accepted his resignation and voted in Ms. Jillian.
We confirmed.
Confirmed.
Yeah, that's right.
We accepted his resignation and we confirmed the Scioto Township Board's appointment of Jillian to LASA.
I don't know that you need to confirm it, but what the articles of incorporation say is that if the supervisor or clerk are declining to serve, then they nominate someone, and it appears to me to be, well, I better look, because if Clerk Flintoff didn't tell you, I had this in my calendar for tomorrow night.
And Jim, I did give him kind of the thumbnail view. We've all reviewed the current articles. I think Will included the language in his letter
Right.
and cited it. I also shared what you shared with me, that you suggest we need new articles of incorporation that are written more clearly.
Yes.
And I would concur, because I think as a non-attorney, kind of plain read of the articles, I don't know that this scenario was intended. And I think there's other areas of our articles we could improve.
I agree.
So what would it take to get new articles? I mean, we don't want to embark on a overly ambitious project, but I do think we should have more clear language about the commitment of each township.
We have articles of incorporation now, and as we've discussed, they were amended 3 times, but each of those amendments was just on the one article. So we have a starting point, and I would think of it as almost doing a translation into 21st century English. And then see where that leaves you. And again, I don't think that part of the articles themselves will be that time consuming. It's the policy, when you start having a discussion about whether you really want this to say that, or what you want the board makeup to be, that you'll get bogged down. But in terms of just taking what you have and saying it more clearly and they have a more logical flow of the discussion in the articles, I don't think will be that hard.
I want to know why I didn't figure out that I could resign.
Mr. Supervisor, if I had an answer, I wouldn't say it publicly.
Right. And I have an answer, but I won't say it in public.
Thank you.
So with that being said, we're gonna
I
kind
think
of
we
frame
need to
this
direct
in.
Mr. Fink to put our articles of incorporation into plain language that any layman should be able to understand.
Support.
Is there, I'm sorry, I'm an engineer. I gotta, I'm used to having to fill things in with the top line and the bottom line. Is there a budget on this or is it an open?
Yeah, cheap.
Well, then you got the right guy.
Well, I would say, I mean, we're talking about six pages of text here. I mean, it's not long, so it's not a substantive
All right.
document. I think what's important is to make clear that the township's, obligation to get closer to, having representatives of both boards here, 3 members of each of the boards here. I also think going back to the prior ones, one thing that was lost in one of the revisions was the position of treasurer. And I think we should consider naming a treasurer for LASA. Because right now we have kind of a de facto treasurers with the supervisors and clerks on the bank statements.
Would you like to have 7 of you, so 2 or 3 members? We don't have to have meetings, but 2 or 3 people for me to talk to about these things. For example, you don't necessarily have to have it say that each supervisor and clerk and another board member are required. You could have something else that has representation from the 2 townships, and then the 7th person who, I assume that when they did that, the idea was to have a tiebreaker if the 2 townships squared off. I think that's unlikely, but we've seen political fights happen before, so it's possible. But would you like to have a couple of your board members work with me on it before I come back with a draft? And I guess my point is it shouldn't be what I think about how it ought to be. I should help you articulate how the board thinks it ought to be.
I'm good with that.
He would be really good at it.
Yeah, I think Supervisor Kingsley and I each have opinions.
Why don't I knock out a draft and send it to the 2 of you?
Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
Do we need a vote on?
Yeah, and I think we could set a goal of having it back to the board by our next meeting.
Once a month?
No.
Quarterly.
You and I can do that.
That's why we only meet 4 times a year.
Vote?
Yeah, we need to vote on that motion.
Okay, Kalaja,
Aye.
the motion to reconstruct the bylaws. Flintoff,
Aye.
Kingsley, and Navarre, aye. Okay.
We have,
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
Carrie,
Now you're in.
you're in. Ooh,
That's right,
we
I
have to
forgot.
vote.
up or down?
Yeah,
No discussion. Yes.
Carrie.
you too.
Okay, I gotta add Carrie.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, my bad. All right, we move on then, go back to, Ted's done, we can continue on with Brandon.
Yeah, the only thing I'm gonna need, Dave, is that proposal I sent over to you, signed with the 10 hydrants.
10 hydrants, okay. So I gotta sign that and send it to you.
Yep. So I know we talked in the ops meeting, the recirculation pump at the wastewater plant. They pushed, it's mid-October that we will get that pump and they'll get it scheduled to be replaced. Which might not be a bad thing if we have lower flows, but we never know in the fall whether we're gonna get rain or not. I had a schedule on sewer jetting, as I know Dave's seen, and we sent out a thing, and then they had a staff member get sick and go in for emergency surgery. So that got pushed back and she's gonna try to fit us in before Thanksgiving. I've got all of the lead and coppers samples completed. I've just got to finish the final report and get it to Eagle before the 10th of this month. And Eagle has inundated me with wastewater correspondence letters, and we just got one for you guys that I'm going to be going through, and I'll get a draft letter for you guys to review and get sent out. It's got to be sent to Eagle by October 27th.
Yeah, all those compliance issues.
Yeah, I mean, the nice part is we actually met and matched the split samples that Eagle did with us. We were within compliance of all of our testing limits. So that was the good part.
All right, that's down in the package down the way, so it's part of the MDEQ requirements. Let's see what page number is that? All right, can't find the page on this. So we've got we got 2 letters there, and we're gonna have to do a PIP plan then too?
Yes, I got to look into that. It's not something I personally have never really done and dealt with, but I'm pulling some resources from my boss who's dealt with that.
Just because
in the past.
one of the materials exceeded the trigger level.
Yeah, I think it was the chlorine when I was talking with my boss not too long ago. I think it's the chlorine that does it to us.
Yep.
So we'll work on that.
So there's a lot of Eagle stuff to work on there. And then I sent you another one today. Eagle sent me something. We got to fill in a survey.
I seen that, and that is something I also have never seen before. I was kind of skimming through it. Because that has to do with water asset management, I believe. And I'm gonna get an opinion from our regional manager, Catherine, to find out what she recommends for that.
All right, I got copied Andrea on that, our ops committee person. Why don't you keep her in on that too? Because she'd be a good resource if we needed her to fill that in.
Will do.
Thank you, Brandon.
Not a problem.
Anything else? And then a lot of POs. You can see the work Brendan's been working on. There's Covalac excavating and septic tank service. They cleaned out our tanks. There's a number of POs from Cummins Sales here. All our generators have been heavily used the past couple of months from all the power outages.
And they are all back up and working perfectly. Knock on wood.
Now you just jinxed us.
I hope I didn't, because I say that stuff all the time, and usually I get myself out of trouble. I hope.
All right, is there any POs we have to, all these POs in here were, we went ahead and approved them because we had to get the generator work done. So, so for the board purposes, I don't know if you want to vote on all these or accept them as noted here. But we gotta do what we gotta do. Well,
I think we could just acknowledge the emergency purchase.
acknowledge emergency purchases and occurred during the past month or 2 months. All right. Is that it then, Brandon?
That is all I have.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
Brandon, I have the Cummins invoices, we're gonna pay those today, so.
Okay, yeah,
and
yeah,
then-
I've seen that.
And then on the fire extinguisher, contract, that's approved too, so I can go ahead and set up an account with, okay.
Yeah, the board approved that, so I'll get that signed into you.
Thank you. That's what I need.
All right, let's see, where are we at here? Operating committee, other than we've got the MDQ issues, operating committee minutes and issues. There's, in here is a copy of the operating committee issues, meeting minutes. If you notice, a lot of discussions took place. And I think we're starting to head in the right direction. With the new format on the bills and getting all the information out, we're looking at communicating a little better with Scioto Township now. We're hoping to improve our IT effort in website and get our site up and going, our IT work better incorporated so we can have minutes on there. I would like to see emails, everybody have an email, and so we can all go to the same source to get the same information, get everything posted. And I know Michael and Dave Fisher are working on that.
And I did talk to our IT director, Chris Bailey. He's gonna start having those conversations, and I'm happy to do that, as well as potentially payroll as well. So I know that's
Okay. Any questions on the comments or the minutes from the operations meeting? Now, talking to Neil runs that, he always said the operations committee did all the work and the board basically approved everything. And I think the format, we want to keep the board, this whole structure of what the ops committee does versus what the board does. I don't want to duplicate it if we don't have to, but we need to be somewhat consistent. I think the way they were operating it back 20 years ago works pretty good, but the board's got to know enough to stay on top of all the state issues and all the money issues, because townships are responsible for that. So it's Loss's job to keep the two township boards informed.
I think there was one issue that the ops committee discussed that needs to be put before this body. Neil Garrow suggested that LASA buy or enter into negotiations to potentially buy the Ann Arbor Country Club. The result of that conversation was that LAIA would have more interest in the ownership of the country club than LASA, but LASA ought to sit down with the Improvement Association and discuss potential participation in any purchase. That would give us the out in terms of easements and so on, protection of the wellheads and things of that nature. I don't think you've had any conversations, have you, with
the board yet, LAI board? I have not. I will be at their next meeting. Someone interpreted those minutes. They did go out and someone interpreted those as we were going to buy it. We're not buying it. We're on operations committee only approved that the negotiation
we would go into
with
discussion.
Initiating some discussions with the LAIA Association should they desire to purchase that property, because it would be to our benefit. Our wells are located in the golf course. We are not protecting our public water supply from the public if we don't, and that's the reason really for the need for the discussions. To try, if we have a chance to secure that property, then we should do that for our protection of our water supply source. So yes, I will bring that up at the next meeting I'll go to on that. They meet monthly, so that'll be coming up.
And I'll just remind us, the operating committee charge is also in our articles of incorporation. So if people have ideas about what the chairperson
That's good. Well,
of
that's a good
LASA might do, how many administrative responsibilities, the way it's written is really imagine that the operating committee is actually operating LASA.
Well, it's,
And it's
actually, it
it's
says
less than,
should do purely administrative roles.
yes,
Now, is that operating? I don't think so.
Well, I think
I
that
think
this
it-
body should create policy and deal with the finances of LASA, and the operating committee ought to deal with the circulation pump and, you know, things of that nature, the day-to-day nuts and bolts of LASA.
And the requirements to meet, of the state to meet, to LASA to meet all their requirements too,
Yeah.
which
Mhm.
are getting to be a lot. Okay. Financial, moving on, can we, anything else, move to Michael?
Yes, actually, I'm going to defer to Ryan Clark. He's in charge of the financial presentation tonight, so. I can speak to all the other issues, billing and collections and all that, but he's the one that does the general ledger. And
Yeah. So what you have in front of you is a memorandum that it's not good or bad, it's just what we see on the front in onboarding, okay? And we're calling out certain aspects to check in and see if they align with your expectations and what, you know, where the board is looking to take things, right? First and foremost, you have about 4.3 million in fund balance, of which 2.9, or excuse me, 2.9 is invested in capital assets. Okay, and the other 1.4 is unrestricted fund balance. Ultimately, what the revenue and expenditures and cash flows show is that a majority of your capital expenditures for the last year, unaudited financials show that most of your capital expenditures were taken out of your reserves. So you really only contributed $4,500 towards capital reserves, of which you spent 70,000. So is that, we haven't had time to do an in-depth look at what your rates are, or, you know, what your plan is, you know, there's, you know, your fund balance clearly can absorb that. You know, is there, just checking in, asking expectations, were you hoping that revenues covered a little bit more of that, or?
Well, rates is always a concern. We are gonna drop off the wastewater loan in 27. So as the homeowner association representative who used to pay the bill, it's, you know, it is a concern, of course, to all the customers, the rates.
Okay,
We've tried, I think last rate increase was 18 or something, or somewhere.
okay.
When the water, after the water lines were upgraded.
And Ryan, I would look for your advice on what fund balance we should maintain and how much we should be,
Okay,
you know, putting for capital. I don't know that we've had these discussions at LASA.
so typically what we like to see is a minimum of a 10-year capital plan, right? Largely that's driven, if Ted's still on, that would be driven by discussion with Ted and Brandon, right? And we can, you know, work with them to put some numbers on paper. And then you say, all right, you know, are we gonna, then the board has to decide, okay, are we going to, you know, bake into our rates the capital expenditures for that plan, right? Or are we gonna bake into the rates coverage of the depreciation of the current assets, which will essentially be funding the capital expenditures. But one way or another in the rates, you like to see both operational costs covered as well as either planned depreciation or planned capital expenditure, right? That's the nuts and bolts of it. Now you had clearly enough fund balance to absorb this, like I said, so there's nothing too out of line here with that. If the board had basically said, yeah, we know what we have coming down the pipeline, right, for the next year, we're gonna absorb that from the fund balance, that's fine, right? But typically, like I said. If you go to the next page, we didn't, like I said, we haven't really reviewed your cost recovery structure. But the user fees, debt and depreciation, the revenue expenditure report doesn't cover these expenses. As you see, the user fees, debt and depreciation was 124.5 for sewer and 172.9 for water. Essentially, it covers everything except your depreciation. So you have your debt, principal and interest, and then your depreciation, which is not really covered at this point. So not a bad thing, not a good thing, just what we're seeing, right? And it helps start the discussion with the board to say, where do you want to take things and, moving on to the cash management piece. An interesting thing that I found was you have quite a bit of idle cash. You have about 570K in idle cash that you have essentially sitting in a savings account, right? That's not really making you much money, right? And this goes towards the rates, right? When you talk about rates, you talk about both operating and non-operating income. At least I do. This is really where Jessica, to your point, having a treasurer as a point of contact might be of value to you, specifically because that's the person who would basically be, have their focus be on your cash management. In our report, we see typically, people use Michigan class. We are not, we are not municipal advisors, as it were, but a lot of what we see where we go and in the basic playbook is a Michigan class account or some type of, public act 20 investment vehicle for idle cash. And then you just track that, every month, every quarter, keep enough in your current checking account. But right now you have 3 savings accounts, one at Chelsea State Bank, and then your other one at Flagstar, along with your checking account, all of which are, just essentially you have negative interest rates.
If I can interrupt, I think Dave and I talked about that, there's one account that you have to occasionally do something because it's dormant or they'll start charging you.
Yeah,
You have a half a
actually,
million dollars.
you're being charged a
Yeah.
$15 monthly fee at Chelsea because it's a dormant bank.
And it's a $500,000 or so.
Yeah.
It's,
We need to do something about that.
This has been discussed before.
Okay.
No action has been
we
taken.
can,
today. We need to.
So,
Well, actually, some action was taken.
Yes.
We asked Sandy to pay at least one bill every 6 months out of Chelsea because they're the offender. And apparently, if we're getting charged $15, that didn't occur.
okay,
We
so,
also asked about kind of recommendations, but I mean, I guess it's partly, structural too. I mean, as the treasurer, right now you've got 4 people, 4 of us on the checking accounts. And so what I'd like us to develop is a recommendation on the general direction that we want to go with our cash and get get a recommendation from Woodhill to bring back to the board, because I mean, we need to consolidate, I think. I don't think we need 3 savings accounts. We need to be earning interest.
Trying to keep it FDIC insured, or what was it?
So Michigan class is so Public Act 20 is, you know, for those, you're all aware, it's basically very safe investment vehicles, right, for governments, right, where you're not gonna lose, or theoretically gonna lose principal. It's a systematic risk if you lose principal, right? Every township I work at has a Michigan class account. So I think it's just part of the playbook, that and an MBIA account if they're looking at, you know, deeper securities, right? For, you know, if they have a larger cash and cash equivalent war chest. You know, what we can do at the next meeting is we can bring some more information and possibly a game plan. You know, in the meantime, I mean, if you have 4 signatories, that's a lot on bank accounts, you know. Typically we see 2.
Two signatures required, but we have 4 people on each, which is, but it's just to say also, I think, you know, no 1, 2, 3, or 4 of us is empowered to make those decisions. We make those decisions as a board.
Well, you could very easily move to close Chelsea State Bank and Bank of Ann Arbor right now, and then you get to work on it. I can put together a letter and we can get your signature on it and talk to the banks and say, hey, all right, especially Chelsea, hey, yeah, it's just sitting here. We're gonna close it. You know, you're welcome for taking our idle cash and going and making money with it. It's not hard. It's a lot easier than it sounds.
A question on your first sentence in cash management.
Yeah.
How does that happen? I mean, money is numbers.
Oh, yeah, so the first portion of that, we are in the midst of your audit right now. There are 4 bank deposits that we have on the bank recs, 2 from May 22nd and 2 in June that don't align with what was in the system at the time. I'm still doing research on that. There is documentation at the bank, so you know, I'm hopeful that I'll be able to sort it out. But your auditors are well, PHP knows, we're working through it. Net right now, the net problem is about $5,000, so not really, you know, that material. But again, just something that we had to call out so that the board was aware that there were some deposits in May and June that were made in the system that don't align with what was deposited at the bank.
Were they batches of payments? Were they batches of checks?
Yeah,
Well, there was one I know of that for some reason, the payments weren't entered into utility bill.
Yeah,
But the
that
money
happened.
did go to the bank.
that's
So-
correct.
And it was only a handful, it's less, 6 or less payments, but one was significant. I think one of them was that Mr. Davis with the large bill. So his payment arrived, it was $1,900, and I think that was one of them.
Yeah,
So it's not a matter of, it's just a matter of working through
that's correct. It's just a matter of
the flow
working
and
through
the
it.
transactions
Yeah,
that's all I saw.
yeah. So I'm working through the bank reconciliations on those right now.
You're watching for customer calls regarding incorrect balances?
Yeah, Michael is.
Yeah. That's how I found out about the one, it's kind of digging back through everything, and that's how I found one of those problems, but it hasn't been too many calls. That most of them I've had a handful of calls on estimated reads and adjusting their bills, but no real collection problems. Just people would like to have a online payment option sometime. And the ACH, I've had about 3 or 4 of those. And we will push that on the bill. We'll encourage people to sign up for ACH because that really is the easiest way for us to collect money. So.
Well, we wanna move on this. I mean, I sold my house, I get 5.5% easy, you know, I don't understand why Lasse's getting 1% or less.
Less.
It's not
We need
uncommon.
to address this.
So, can we,
What's your recommendation?
yeah, what,
Close the two accounts, I heard that.
Yeah, I mean, the board can motion to do that today. You're all here. You have a consensus.
Where would we put the money? Where would the money-
I would motion to move it right into your Flagstar checking account. And then at the next board meeting, when we come to you with, you know, basically a baked policy that we have from other, you know, other authorities,
Like
right?
an investment policy
Yeah.
of sorts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically. Then you can move to take the next step if that is, if you want to open a class account, then you can, and then we can move money in there. And this is really where having a treasurer, like you said, would really help you. And you know, this is non-operating income, right? So it's not going to be what you base your rate structures on, right? But it does help belly those rates, essentially,
Right, we shouldn't be losing money.
over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think that you aren't necessarily losing money, I guess, but what I would say is we all know what the rate of inflation is. We all know what treasuries are at. US treasuries are at 5%. I can go out there right now and I have as a retail investor and I can get 5% on a 60, 90 day, right? Maybe a little bit less if I'm not choosy. And so, you know, and I have less capital to work with than LASA does. So there's no reason that you should have to be sitting there with 3 savings accounts.
I move that this body cash out the Chelsea State Bank and the Ann Arbor Bank accounts and deposit the funds into Flagstar Bank with the thought that we might look at other investment vehicles at our next board meeting.
Support. Go ahead, Jerry. Carrie supports.
all right, got a motion and a support. Roll call, Kalasia,
Aye.
Flintoff,
Aye.
Kingsley,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
and Navarre, aye. Motion unanimously passed.
So
All
you'll
right,
come back with a proposed
Yeah.
plan of action.
Yeah,
right?
at your next meeting, we'll come back with some more material for the board review.
all right, so
Next issue?
continue on.
The next one is payroll, and we presented 2 options, of which your attorney, your ever diligent attorney here, nixed the first one. So really from the standpoint of what the board could do to save money really from, the main thing that you'd be saving money on is the cost of the payroll program, the BSNA payroll program that you're spending.
How much do we spend on that each year?
I'm sorry, I don't have that for you.
I don't know that number offhand. I
Yeah.
haven't seen that come up yet.
Yeah, Colleen mentioned it to me over
Did
the
she?
phone.
Okay.
But it's several $100s a year too, and I think you make,
Couple,
you know,
yeah, more than
More
that.
than that. It is more than
What's
that.
that?
The module, the payroll module for
Oh.
BSNA. I know
So you-
we pay a couple thousand at SIO. I believe that's what.
Yeah,
Colleen said.
it's,
I didn't know if they had a scale for small, but I probably not.
no, they don't, because you pay for support when you
Right.
buy the module.
BSNA, well, for that, I know. Service, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, your attorney Nix, I believe
Number 2.
the second one, yeah, I'm sorry. The first option would be to have SIO adopt the board as, you know, and pay them a fee potentially, right? These are all just options, right? You could continue to go on doing it the way you're doing it. And then we continue to issue W-2s and whatnot, so.
I spoke with our finance manager who does payroll. She says it's really would be no big deal.
Yeah.
to add in LASA, should the LASA board want to enter into that agreement with Scioto Township. We have the software. It'd be a matter of probably just keeping LASA on the same schedule. She does monthly checks to the Board of Review, Planning Commission, and ZBA members. And so she could just put LASA into that cycle. You know, and I asked her, I said, like, how much time would this be? And she said, maybe an hour to set it up and then, you know, 15 minutes every time she runs it. I mean, this is nothing, so.
Then essentially the township would send an invoice to LASA for the wages, and the payroll taxes on it,
Well, yeah, and the service.
and the service cost.
Yeah.
That would be the simplest. I ran a company that did compensation, and the first thing I did is I outsourced my HR and payroll department because it was much simpler for a small company to have somebody else handle it and pay a small fee.
And then who would handle the, you know, I guess the W-2s at the end, but what about the quarterly reports?
So that would really be rolled into your to Scioto Township's 941s ultimately.
Okay, so that would just be part of the same 941s that we already do?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay.
Yes, and all of that compliance is then handled by your payroll people at the township. And then we would simply write a check to cover the cost, the salary, the wages, and the service, whatever the township costs.
Yeah.
And it'd be one check. So you'd say, here's the payroll, here's the breakdown, and we just.
It probably would show up in a payroll report too, because we reimburse from our public safety for our fire board members, and it comes out on a report for me, exactly what to reimburse.
The outliner here is, we could each do our own,
That's what I was thinking too.
but then we've got Dave.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got 3 board members from Sile, 3 from Webster, and it would be easiest for us to do those in-house. But
That's what I
we
was
have one leftover person.
You could just.
You could take the gift.
No, you could just decide which one wants custody of the chair.
Well, I think that it makes more sense for the entire board to be with one township.
Yeah, I think
But it'd
it
be
would.
simpler if everybody was, you know, paid by their own township rather than paid for by LASA.
And this recommendation is coming from Woodhill as a way to improve our efficiency.
Yeah, your cost
Cost
benefit
overall.
essentially. And honestly, I didn't think of that one. So, you know, where every board member could be paid by their.
But Dave is not a board member.
Right, right, except for the chair, which.
Well, it's not necessarily that he'd
Township they
be
live in.
the chair
That
either.
township.
Well, the chair position
There you
would be paid,
Yeah.
have to be paid somehow.
Yeah, if we're gonna do both, whichever township the other.
He's a
person-
resident of.
Yeah,
Oh, there you go.
That's
so that could change from.
a common sense approach.
Yeah, we'll let you have Dave because he lives in the city.
Yeah, just reverse my zip code.
So I would just say, this isn't necessarily one the board has to, or I would be keen on the board needing to make a move on now, right? It's just to put the discussion out there so that, you know, that there are better ideas and better ways to operate that are more effective ultimately for your rates, for your ratepayers, right?
So we do have a payroll to run. I can also check with BSNA and find out when the license is renewed and then see if that dovetails with the end of the year or something.
Yeah, so the best way I would say it like this, it would be it's a long-term maneuver, right? From a savings standpoint for, you know, even albeit a couple grand, it still is a long-term maneuver. From an operational standpoint, it is a lot easier on your payroll operators, your finance managers, whoever it is, if this is not done at the end of a tax year, right? So this is something, you know, I would say it's out here for discussion. Maybe we go back to our individual townships and we move on it sometime January, February, right? Then we would have, the LASA would have one more partial year to report on. And then the townships would take it over from there, or even, you know, if we can, you know, make the switch across calendar years, across, you know, income tax reporting years, great. That would be my
Sounds like the simplest thing would be just to ride it out till the end of the year with LASA.
absolutely.
And then start up after.
Yeah, and then whenever we can, and whenever the cancellation, you know, for the BSNA program takes effect and the windfall goes back to LASA and baked into your rates, then that's, you know, going forward. You're talking about a 20, 30-year maneuver here, not something that, you know, you need a quick win on, right? So,
All right, then I will work on the next payroll.
That would be great. And I mean, I'm open to either idea, whatever Webster prefers, either splitting the members or SIO handling it. I mean, I would wanna just have a interagency services agreement we, you know, draft up. But if we could decide on kind of one of the two options we wanna go with, we could get this in place at our December meeting and have it in place for the next tax year.
December meeting.
That's right, no December meeting.
Right.
So we always have an asterisk on December.
No, that's on the
First
ops
week in January.
For the ops
January.
meeting.
Okay, January.
Is the fiscal year beginning and end for LASA? Is it the same as
June,
town?
July.
fiscal, yeah, June 30th is your fiscal year, that's correct.
No, township is March 31st. Years long, yeah.
Moving, next, okay. So the next item we have on is the debt service payments to the state. The state offers direct withdrawal, automatic payments for loans it holds. So basically, the large payment that was made this past week, I think, right?
Past Monday.
Past Monday. You know, it's an easy, effective way, et cetera, et cetera. We recommend doing this. We'll set that up. I mean, the state auto withdraws from every, you know, a lot of people. And honestly, consolidating your savings accounts right now and just moving them into the checking account, makes this easier, right? Because then we have one pool of cash to manage the fluctuations on. We plan for and know when that payment's gonna come due, move the money over, right? Maximize your idle cash returns. Then moving on, ACH options for customer payments, right? This is a great option that a lot of places have, water and sewer operations use and leverage. It's no cost. It's essentially a file formatted for whatever bank you have, and it's an upload, right? It's no cost to the residents. It's no processing fee. It's, you know.
I think we collected about $58,000 in the last billing cycle
Yeah.
from ACH, and that was the simplest $58,000.
Yeah. So we recommend, you know, continuing to focus on that. I mean, we could even put a message, you know, isn't it on the bill? In the back? Yeah,
and
that's
I'm
right.
going to keep encouraging that.
Yeah, so that's a big one. That's a big win, right? It, you know, reduces payment processing costs and all that. The next.
Sorry, first of all, let me skip back to the debt service payments automatically.
Sure.
I just wanna get the board sense on what we wanna do there.
Oh.
They would need the officer's signature
To move ahead with that.
I'm in favor of it as long as it's secure.
Yeah, me too.
Yes.
Okay. So if there's no objections, is it okay if we go ahead with that? Okay, I just want to make sure we didn't talk about it. And then the ACH, a couple things. One, I think, I don't know if we're required by law to have an ACH resolution and policy as council are. But I think it would be good for us to develop some written internal controls for that. And it was sort of hammered home to me when I got an email checkup from Flagstar, just giving, they have a requirement to advise us on what the internal controls for ACH may look like. And it was such a long list, overly complicated, but it did, remind me that we need to have some internal controls written down about ACH that this board adopts, because we haven't done that. We implemented ACH. It's successful. We want to keep it, but we should document what our procedure is.
Okay.
Do we have a policy?
Yeah, we have an ACH. We have an electronic payments and receipts policy that we can bring to the
That
board.
would be a model.
Yeah,
Okay,
that would be
great.
good.
That's not a
That would
problem.
be great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. And we can we'll tailor it to LASA. And then,
Thank you, Ryan.
yeah, absolutely.
I have a question about ACH, but it's not about customer payments. It's about signing up for like electronic debiting for DTE bills. So that they're just paid. Does that require a policy or?
I think it's in the same
Typically,
one.
we bake it into the same policy. That's
Okay.
correct. That's right.
Yeah. Oh, did you send it to me, Jim? You can say this out loud in public if I missed an email, which I probably did. It's okay.
We know who's more likely to be wrong.
We don't know. I missed an email from Jim, but he apparently sent me a draft ACH policy.
Oh, great.
Okay, great.
So I
Yeah,
apologize.
sorry,
and
I
we
wasn't
have
trying to
to
step on any toes.
May I ask a question of your attorney? Can I sign up DTE for ACH payments pending adoption of that policy? Or should we wait?
We'd have to check your credit.
Well, I'm not paying it. It's your bank. Better to check my wife's credit. She has.
So I'm pretty sure the
I-
policy covers both of these scenarios, payments and.
It may be that I didn't send it, Madam Clerk.
Yeah, I would like to pay just like Comcast and DTE and those recurring bills that we have that. It's just,
I'm sorry, what are those two?
oh, DTE Energy, like
Yeah,
the
but
get.
why do, I'm sorry, I'm ignorant to a lot of this.
We get 5 bills every month for DTE for the different locations.
Or to the different locations.
To the, okay.
Yes,
yeah.
it would just be easier. You can just sign up for ACH and it would just come out of the Flagstar
I
account.
have it, but I didn't
And
send it.
then we get a copy of the bill, but the payment,
And what is Comcast for?
internet and basic television at the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay.
So they can watch the weather. I don't even know, is there a TV there?
No, there's not. You could probably get rid of that.
Good.
Really?
What I would like is get you a little faster speed right now, so I think that's the lowest speed. But I will look and see if we can trade TV for a little bit more juice in the internet.
That would be beneficial.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So she was.
No, we knew, she and I both, knew she was being employed.
Yeah.
You want me to continue?
All right, where are we at? So,
Did you finish your part?
Yeah, I was sort of blending into the customer payment options, which is really,
Yeah, the customer payment option we talked about, and this is just feedback, I probably talked to 30 or 40 customers in the last couple of months. And I have a form out there to gauge interest from people. And they like the idea of receiving their bill via email. We would still continue the paper bill because print and mail cost is at a minimum charge, so we don't save any money by not printing out a bill at the present time. Email bill would just be another convenience. Yes, and then online access to utility usage and billing history. I do have a quote from BSNA. It's a $2,500 setup it's public record search is the service they call it, and then it's $1,500 a year for the authority. So that any customer of the authority could go online and look up their billing history, their payment history, and their usage history.
What is that again called? Yes.
It's called public record search, and your townships have it.
Yeah, so Scioto Township, we use it, and people can look up their utility bills. That's too bad that they, and it's a little more expensive than I would hope.
Well, there's two options. One is if you wanted to cover the cost is $1,500, which is $3 per customer per year.
Yeah.
And the other one is you can sign up and the customer can pay to access their account. Yeah.
Oh.
So it's something to think about. We don't have to do it.
Is there demand there? Are you getting some implications?
I'm a water nerd, so I look
Yeah.
up water bills constantly. I'm always checking because I see people complaining about them.
We're just coming out of the rock ages here. I mean.
I understand, and it's just an option, and you may want, you know what, I can send you an email and you can play around on my water bill at my house. And you can see what you get. You get a graph of usage. It shows transactions, what you paid for, what each element is, when you paid or when the bill was posted. But we don't get a ton of calls. I'm not getting.
Right. I don't think so.
No, but it's just an option and maybe it's less expensive when you consolidate it onto a server. I don't know.
What I've seen is that,
Which
I didn't.
I'm sorry, if we consolidated with SIO, the bills, or that would be,
No, what we're talking about is if to put the application right now is on a laptop computer.
oh,
And so the recommendation is move it into a building like this on a server, so it's behind a firewall and it's on a server that's backed up every day. We back up, VC3 is doing that, but this is just a much more robust.
This is the discussion we're having with Chris Bailey to come up with that,
Security.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we would always keep separate BSNA.
Yes.
And for
Yeah,
that
they're,
separate
think
utility
of them as side by side, not,
Yeah,
they're not integrated. They're
Right.
side by side applications on the same computer essentially. And then, by the way, the email billing feature, it's best done if the application is housed on a server. It's
Okay.
just part of the Windows architecture that makes that work better and the BSNA software. But that's it. And everything else is going okay. Brandon, when are we ready to do reads?
Whenever you get me the read file.
Okay, I will get that to you hopefully tomorrow. Any other questions for us at the moment?
Any thing financially, everything is pretty much in line from what you saw?
the audit's going smoothly. I've been in communication with Deidre about it since we onboarded. So she's, today is her essentially on-premise week, so today is the day. Today is when she started the audit,
okay.
the active audit. We prepped for it last week with work papers and, fixed asset schedules and did all the journal entries that we needed to. The only open item that I have are these deposits in May and June, and we've called them out to her, so,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, before I came here, I responded to, I don't know, 3 or 4 of her questions already, so.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
So will we have a presentation from her? Is that at our January?
Yeah, it's usually in
meeting?
January.
Is it okay? Yeah, I mean, I would expect she's well ready for it. I mean, it's a fast audit.
Yeah.
Yep, she's already submitted it,
Oh, yeah.
so it's pretty much.
I didn't know when she presented to you, so January. Great.
Okay. Well, there were some other financial, approvals for payment. How do we want to do this? I guess that question came up. Previously never approved the invoice from the accounts manager, or we don't approve pretty much the information from Brandon when we get it. He's contracted, it's a fixed price. You know, as long as it's nothing exception to the contract, we just, you know, its payment is automatically processed. I know that came up this time. What's the board's position on that? Do we want to have the chairman should formally approve these documents every month or every,
Yes,
think so?
I do. I mean, we don't have a written procurement policy, you know, we don't need to make it overly complicated, but I do think
Okay.
that's appropriate.
Wouldn't it
Does
make
the-
you feel more comfortable paying the group to have? I mean, I would just feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah, what would you like? Like right now, like today I ran the checks. You always get the last, you know, you're signing the checks. If we do the DTE, those are coming out automatic. But like today I put the bills together and journalized the invoice, and then we run a report. I can send that to you if that's what you're looking for, at least for a comfort level.
Oh, for all the checks?
Well, for the checks we're going to write, you know, here's the invoices, like right here. Here's all the invoices we ran.
Well, that's one, okay, that's one thing, yeah.
And then this would be what we're paying when we're done. So we could do that. It's not, we're not writing checks every single day. And we're not writing 100 or 200.
And we see the list after the fact is the way it's done now, basically.
You're gonna see it either before or after, if you wanna see it before. I don't have a problem with getting started with that, and then I'll just send it to, who would I send it to?
Well, I don't know, where are we staying here, what do we want? I gotta approve them, I approve them so they'll do the
I
work.
read something in these minutes. Said something about you.
That's somebody, I don't know
Who
who
took
put
them
that
in?
in there, but
Oh, well, I read it.
I think I did.
that says March.
So Dave, it would be you approving the work and approving the payment.
Okay.
Right, and as far as the informal way we've been doing it, you approve things for Brandon. Brandon gets the process rolling, I get a bill, I pay it, or I put it in the system, I write a check, you sign the check.
Yeah.
And you guys said it, yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's involved.
Yeah, I would not say send it to the entire committee, because then that just,
Yeah.
then there's 7 people looking at it. You know what you're expecting. And then the others sign the checks. That works for me.
He is not thrilled.
And even if it's just a.
All you have to do is look at this. You're gonna send him this, right?
Yeah.
No, it's
Right,
not-
You just say,
email
go
back.
ahead,
Well,
right?
no, I get every individual email that comes out, hey, I need your signature to get this guy going.
Well, what I will do is, while we get this off the ground, I will make sure that you get the invoice in that report as a 1 PDF. So you'll get the invoices we're paying, matches that. You say,
Okay,
it's good to go, I write the checks come over.
oh, I see, for that. You wanna go through that process, okay.
I don't want to make this
I agree.
cumbersome and.
We haven't, that's a process we haven't done,
We
it's
need
just
to
the
do
checks
that.
have been written. And then we kinda check after the fact.
Right, and we're small enough, I think we can do it this other way, and I'm more comfortable because maybe, we've had a couple of cases where we still getting the email switched over, so we've had a couple that have not been paid. And
And I
so,
may be out of town for a while, and you can always send them to John. He's back. So,
he's not happy about that. I'll do whatever you want,
He's good at it.
okay?
No, thank you, Dave and John.
Okay, so I will approve all those.
Yep, we'll make it easy,
That's a good process.
I'm
So
not
is there a
into
check, are there
creating a new
checks made up for
bureaucracy.
Woodville, so you guys paid?
What's that?
You
Yeah,
got
so
the checks there?
so-
You signed it?
You got 2.
typically we just would have to save Dave the invoice register via email, and you can
Right.
literally email us back approved.
That's all I wanna do.
Yeah,
That's all I
okay.
wanna do.
All right, great. I just wanted to make sure that,
That's all I wanted.
yeah, okay.
I'm anti-bureaucracy where possible, but I wanna make it clean, simple. So that all you have to do is look at it and say, okay, approved.
Any other questions on procedure for that?
Nope, that's all I have.
Right? Any old business?
Do we want to approve the list of checks? Or are we not gonna do that now?
Make a motion to approve the list of checks. Cause those have not been written yet, or have they?
They're
They
just
all-
getting,
they have-
he
they're
just signed them.
They're just writing.
Yeah, he's,
Okay, they haven't gone out. Pelagia,
Aye.
Flintoff,
aye.
Kingsley. Aye. Carrie,
Aye.
and Navarre, aye. Okay, approved, unanimous. All right, let's move on, move on. New business. Shared IT services with SILE, so we've started the process.
Yes,
The contact been made with the two parties
they
yet?
haven't met yet. I apologize, that's on Chris.
Okay.
He's, it may take a little bit of time as he's actually upgrading our servers. But, I think
We're
it's
fine for
totally,
the moment.
yeah, totally doable, and just like payroll, I think it'll be a good move. We've got good security, good technology,
Okay,
qualified IT person.
then we discussed financial policies and changes suggested by Woodhill. Item C, setting up a cleanup day for the files at the plant. Brandon and I got them all there, so.
Your work is done. You did, you got them all there. So,
Are they-
Barb and I, need to spend some time with the retention schedule, and we'll be doing a lot of shredding, mostly.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the LASA files can come here and be stored in the basement as needed. But as you know, it's probably 20 plus boxes worth. And when we were there, Michael, Barb and I, we thought we thought maybe we could just have a bit of a work day where a few of us could be deployed to work on files. But there's also just some other stuff that needs to be cleaned up there. And I don't know if that's Brandon, I know Patrick McLaughlin said he'd be happy to help jump in. And I guess the stuff that's there is like, what was it, Barb? Like some broken, Brandon, you probably know better than others, but like there's a broken refrigerator and
A stove, there's an oven.
there's an oven.
Yeah,
There's some junk.
we've actually started getting rid of a lot of that stuff, little by little, into the dumpster that gets dumped once a month.
So is that something you think you can finish cleaning up, or do we need a special effort?
I think we can probably finish cleaning most of that stuff up. I know Andy's on the meeting here as well, but he's kind of been heading up most of that and taking care of a lot of that stuff. We've been trying to plan and find time to we have a power washer. We've done some power washing. We actually want to even get up there and do more power washing of the concrete and other areas there as well. So we've already started, and it's a continuous effort to try to get rid of some of that stuff. The old samplers need to go that are all out there, but those have Freon in them. And I looked into throwing them in a dumpster. The problem is you can't throw refrigerant in a dumpster. So we're gonna probably have to have something done with those.
Okay, well, I think you should work towards getting that equipment out of there Brandon, your guys, that shouldn't be something that this group should do. This group will work on the files. And,
So is that okay with the board if we find it, we can do it offline, but find a good day and make a party of it? I kept insisting on calling it a party. Barb was insisting on calling it a cleanse. It's a cleanse.
Aromatic cleanse.
yeah, that's,
Yeah.
What is in all these boxes?
So,
Payroll.
what? So
What did you say?
there's, so paper, so there was and I apologize, I took a vacation this summer during that 1 week when all this was going down. And had I been here, I would have intervened and said, please bring everything here to Scioto Township Hall. And I just want to say, everything can come here. But the paper is from our prior accounts manager's home, and I know Dave
Well, I understand
and
that,
others.
but what's in the boxes?
Michael,
Literally.
Billing registers,
yeah, a lot of stuff.
payment slips. She kept, kept all the payment coupons, whatever you call them. And so we have a lot of those going back years. There's a lot of old records too.
Payroll records. Yeah, so.
Yeah, there were some payroll records.
But it needs to be sorted through, John, because when we spent some time out there, we were looking for, like, say, the checks or something we needed, and it wasn't, say, in the newest or at the top. So there was some digging. So we want to make sure that we go through and destroy what we don't need and keep anything of significance in an organized fashion. But it's typically 7 years. Some things we have to keep permanent records of.
Yeah, there were some records dating back to the sixties and I kept going back and going, wow, this has been around here a long time. Whoa, it's been around like 60 years or more.
Yeah, so
And some of those records are actually in there in the old minutes and they're kind of interesting to read.
And so they predate the prior account manager's involvement with LASA too. So some of them are old and maybe of at least historical significance we want to keep. Many of them just need to be shredded, but it just is gonna take some time.
I bet you can consolidate that quite down to 4 or 5 boxes.
Electronically, did you get all the files that were available?
I think we have everything we need to operate, yeah. Yes, we're fine. Have not come across anything that I said, I need that. And Brian and I are.
Okay, good.
Yeah, from my standpoint, the fixed asset schedule was probably the biggest concern, and we had that.
And was it a concern because it didn't exist or it was in disarray?
No, we just needed to make sure we had it for the audit, and we had it.
Okay,
I found it pretty easily.
okay, in a soft copy, okay, good.
We confirmed it with what the auditor had from last year, which was a PDF, so we typically we give the auditor as much in Excel as we can, because it's easier for them.
Yes.
They have a lot of PDFs. I think they're excited to get this Excel files this year, so.
Yeah.
I can help.
All right. So we'll set a date in the near future.
I'll set a date and see if anybody shows up.
All right, yeah, I'll see. Okay, moving on, 4872 Greenock Court Water Bill Appeal. All right, I received an email that was towards the end of the document there.
I didn't see an email.
It was like the last page of it, or the bill, his billing history was the last page.
Kevin
Right,
Davis?
Yep.
Yeah, Kevin Davis is the guy. So basically, he says here normally well under $700 a quarter. However, our most recent bill was nearly $2,000. We had assumed our insurance claim would cover it, but it does not. We had a pipe joint break down, spilling water into our crawl space for several weeks. So what, historically the board has looked at this situation, and said, well, they didn't really use the sewer, they used the water. One way to do that is to look at it, there's two ways to look at it, or the board has looked at it. One is, estimate the bill on just, the normal rates, and assuming water, or the water consumption only for, how would you do that? For all but the normal water usage, delete the sewer side of it, because it never made it to the sewer. So, and the costs are about $5 each, one's 4.5, one's 5.5, I think. So, you know, cut his bill probably in a third or so, I don't know. Or you just, that way he's paying for the water he used, but he's not, you know, he really didn't use the sewer. The other way is, you look at what his bill was last year at the same time, or get an idea, or somewhere around there, and take an average of what it would have been. I don't know, I didn't look at the bill then to see, try to figure that out at all. Michael's got the bill attached there, so. But he paid it already then?
He did pay it, and the one thing he did do, he was assessed a $200, almost a $200 penalty. And I'm just guessing that he delayed the payment because of, and he was working through things, but by the time I got the payment, this was part of that one deposit that wasn't entered into utility bill. So by the time I found that, I had already processed the penalties. And I do not know when his check arrived, whether it was before or after that penalty situation. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it looks like he got $200 and he was right on the cusp of being late or not. And I don't have insight into whether that bill arrived on time. So if it was,
He didn't say what he wanted. I always tell these people, tell me exactly what you want.
He doesn't want to pay the bill.
Yeah, no kidding.
oh, he did pay the bill. He did pay it.
Yeah.
And he paid the bill.
He did.
I would suggest that we charge him for the water that disappeared or he used, and have him pay an average sewer bill and refund his $192 penalty.
I support that.
Any other further discussion on it?
To be,
Then you take care.
yeah, I can take care of all that. Just to be specific about the sewer, would you like me to average the first quarter bill for the last 4 years rather than summer has a higher usage?
Yeah, right.
So
I would take same month previous year.
yeah, I'll look at this. If I go back 3 years and say what's the average,
Yeah,
okay, that's what I can do. You're welcome.
And then you're gonna write him a check or give him credit?
We'll see how much the bill is and I guess we can reach out to him because we do have another billing.
Yeah, the water will be in there, so that'll be half, a little less than half.
Yeah, we'll see what it comes up and it may just negate him having to pay the next bill. So he's been very, we've talked a couple times back in the beginning of this, he was very, very
Okay.
cooperative, I guess.
Yeah, now, what we've done in the past is, Sandy's always says, I don't care, just pay something now. And you can dispute it and we'll resolve it, but, and let's come up with a plan. You're gonna pay so much every quarter or something. So at least, I think then she avoided the penalty, the late penalty, because they were paying it off.
Well, he's.
Whatever the procedure
Yeah,
is.
I'll figure that out and I'll send the bill to you so you know what we're talking about and how that all works, breaks out.
Okay, and then you'll let him know the situation.
Absolutely, yep, I've got his email.
All right, is there anything else then? Public comment, any public comment?
I would like to welcome Julian to the LASA board and look forward to your participation.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun so far. You were right, Jess.
I told her you all were fun.
Yeah.
And your job will be, of course, to ask for a motion to adjourn. Late like this.
Oh,
Actually, you know what? There's actually one public comment, excuse me.
Oh, we do?
We do have one.
Okay.
Can we take it?
Sure.
All right, first up is Pam Boyd. Pam?
Thank you. I really appreciated the concise, very informative, financial report this evening, from Woodhill. It's very nice. Thank you. And Jillian, awesome. I'm very pleased to have you on this board. You're such an asset to Scioto Township. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. I see no other hands.
Okay, that being said, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, Kingsley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed. Unanimously approved. Thank you all.
Hey, Brandon, I'll get your fire extinguisher.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I need to.
Good night.
All right, see you, everyone.